What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the RideAlong Sports live show. I'm your host, Zack Ainsworth, and we have Brandon Taylor over there keeping everything looking good on the YouTube and keeping everything in your ear sounding good on Apple and Spotify. Look, here at RideAlong Sports, we don't care if you're in the vehicle driving a truck, you're driving a car, you're driving a bulldozer, you're riding a unicycle. We want to come alongside you and just ride along with you and give you all the best sports news from the SEC and college football in general. That's what we're here for. We're here so you can ride along and go about your day and not have to worry about digging in the weeds and looking for all this information. You can find it all in one place right here on the RideAlong Sports live show and on Apple and Spotify in podcast form. We're so glad you're here. We have a jam-packed show today. We have got a lot of from SEC Media Days to violations to recruiting to running back rankings. We're going to end the show with the top 14 running backs in the SEC listed in order. And Brandon's got the graphics ready. He's got the cameras looking good. I'm going to throw it over now to Brandon. He's going to hit you with today's trivia question.
Yes, sir. And I'd like to say happy again to be on YouTube for a second week in a row, Spotify, wherever you're listening to us or watching us today. And like last week, I'd like to do another trivia question. And we may move on and try other things, but for now, just the basics. So the trivia question for July 18th, 2023, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and not to pick on Vanderbilt, but we want an SEC, kind of an SEC-based question this week. The Vanderbilt Commodores have a losing record against every SEC team but one. And which team is that? Now, if you stay tuned, I'll give you a hint later on in the show, and at the end of the show, if you stay tuned, we'll get you that answer. But before we move into our first segment, Zach, I'd like to go over some headlines. What do you think about that?
Hit the headlines, man. Let's hear them.
Headlines for today. And as you all know, SEC Media Days, well, I hope you know, SEC Media Days are taking place this week from Nashville, Tennessee. So yesterday, we had Brian Kelly, Eli Drinkwitz, and Jimbo Fisher speaking up at the podium. And, of course, all these coaches, they bring players with them. But I guess we won't have enough time to talk about that today, will we, Zach?
I mean, we'll hit on a few of them, but we have such a loaded show today. Like the categories I've already mentioned, it's going to be hard to get to the coaches. But, hey, look, there's a lot of great sources out there that are actually at the media days. A lot of people out there actually covering the media days, and there's videos online on YouTube, on Twitter, podcast form. There's a lot of sources for your media day needs, and we have full-time jobs. We don't get the chance to ride up to Nashville for SEC media days. But if you're interested in that type of stuff, again, we might touch on one or two little pieces of it. But if you're interested in that stuff, there's a lot of great places to go online to find that kind of information.
That is exactly correct. So, as we say, SEC Media Days. Today, we had Hugh Freeze, Kirby Smart, and Zach Arnett up at the podium. And we'll talk about the coaches and what they said, and we'll have a brief discussion on that later today. And, of course, we have more coaches later in the week, and we'll either cover that later, probably on the next show.
Let me jump in, though. You said Zach Arnett spoke at today's media day.
I did. And
he has my favorite quote so far of any coach, I think, at the media days today. He said they were asking him, what do you want the culture to be like at Mississippi State? What do you want to be known for? And he said, I want to be known like Mississippi State's always been known for, is physical, tough. When you come play Mississippi State, he said, you better bring your lunchbox and a hard hat because it's going to be a physical game. And I love that. Thought that was the best, the funniest, the most, like, it got me pumped up. And I was like, all right, Zach Arnett, run through a brick wall. I was like, let's go. But, yeah, that was awesome. Bring your lunch and your hard hat if you've got Mississippi State on your schedule this year. You ready to jump into some things, Brandon?
Yeah. But first, we're going to definitely talk about Tennessee, no doubt. The NCAA violations that just broke last Friday. But before that, I want to bring this up a little bit, this NIL news that we have for this week. Now, there's 7 NIL entities. Now, we have collectives, if you don't know, that are not directly affiliated with the universities, but they work in conjunction with them to help spread funds to the players. They have contracts, essentially, with these collectives. And last week, 7 of them, the ones from the universities of Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Florida State, USC, Southern California, Michigan, and Penn State. And they came together and they formed a group that they're calling the Collective Association. Now, this is in its very early stages. And basically, how I understand it, it's going to be something like the NFL Players Association, for an example. And basically like a union for the players. But according to On3, they're going to be founded on 3 pillars. 1, to serve as a voice for athletes and their best interests, to provide a forum for collectives to discuss current NIL issues and share best practices, and to provide a unified voice for collectives to leverage their position. And we'll obviously cover that more as it develops. But as we move into Tennessee here, Zach, as we know, Friday, the NCAA announced their penalties against the university. Over 200 violations committed during Coach Jeremy Pruitt's tenure. Multiple recruiting penalties, a fine of over $8 million. But they didn't receive a bowl ban. What do you think about all this, Zach?
Man, honestly, this has been such a huge topic in the world of college football. I think a lot of us remember the Ole Miss ban from a couple years ago went down with Hugh Freeze, and of course they received a bowl ban. Or if you even go farther back a little bit, Urban Meyer and Ohio State received a 1-year bowl ban. You go further back than that, SMU got the death penalty back in the 80s. During the 80s, where they couldn't be in a bowl indefinitely. So bowl bans are, rare but not unheard of in the world of college football. So many were shocked when Tennessee didn't receive one. And my take on it is it was a good thing. I don't think Tennessee should be penalized. Well, let me rephrase that. This current Tennessee team shouldn't be penalized. I don't have the exact percentage in front of me, but I'd guess 90 to probably 99% of the players who were on that roster with Jeremy Pruitt, who were brought there illegally through, the handing out of money and Chick-fil-A and McDonald's bags and that sort of nonsense, aren't even on the team anymore. This coaching staff that's there of Josh Heupel and those guys, they weren't the coaching staff who were doing all these illegal things. Even some of the administration has changed as far as the athletic director goes. It would make no sense to me to punish this current staff and these current players for something of sins that were committed from past coaches and past players. I agree that the university should be penalized. An $8 million fine sounds good to me. The money doesn't matter. I'm never going to see the $8 million. No Tennessee fan out there, it really is not going to affect you that much. You're not the one with $8 million that you're handing over to the NCAA. They do have some scholarship penalties, but Tennessee already self-imposed a lot of that over the past few years, and they're really only going to have to give up about a scholarship and a half a year is what it averages out to. So about 2 scholarships a year they're going to be punished. The grand scheme of things, that's not going to really hurt Tennessee. The money's probably the biggest thing. $8 million is quite a chunk, but like I said, if you're a Tennessee fan out there, you shouldn't really be worried about this. That's not your $8 million, and I don't really think Tennessee has got a wealth of money and boosters and people. Tennessee as a university has well over $8 million is what I'm trying to say. It's not going to bankrupt them paying the NCAA $8 million. I think this was I'm going to say something controversial. This was actually a good decision by the NCAA, something we don't see very often. Yeah, I know, a good decision. There's no reason this team should be bowl banned. It was a good call, and I think you're going to see this moving forward if you handle it the way Tennessee did. A good on Tennessee as a university. They fired those coaches. They got them out of there as soon as they found out basically everything that had been going on. They pretty much, got the coaches out of there and, cut ties with all of that. And that was good by them. Now, if you have a team down the road who decides to keep a coach and they know these things are going on and they just, turn a blind eye to it, then you might see a bowl ban pop up. But the way Tennessee did it, by getting all that old regime out of there, there's no reason this new regime should be penalized. So good on Tennessee, good on the NCAA, and a good all the way around. You're losing $8 million, but hey, you've got plenty of it.
It's a breath of fresh air to see the NCAA actually acting, what's the word, like human-like, right? Because I feel like they so often, and more often than not, act like there's not real people, and it seems like there's not real people making these decisions. And like you were talking about, if you go back to Ole Miss, for example, and obviously there's many examples in the past, but take a look at Ole Miss, and I don't have all the allegations that they were under in front of me.
That's a lot.
It was a lot, and you look at, I can't think off the top of my head what they self-imposed. I know they did self-impose a one-year bowl ban. Of course, the NCAA added to that, and among other things, really came down on that program. But it is a breath of fresh air to see them, not just think logically, but actually think about the kids and think like, how long did this go on? Like a 3-4 year investigation?
2 seasons. Oh, the investigation itself. The investigation's been going on since. His last season coaching was the COVID year, I believe. So
yes.
Since the COVID year, we're in about a 3-year investigation, maybe a little less than that. But yeah, a long time.
All right, so let's just. Will you mind if I read a few of these allegations?
Go ahead.
The penalties issued to Tennessee here on this article that I have: 5 years of probation, a reduction of 28 football scholarships, They've
already self-imposed quite a few of those.
Yes. 16 self-imposed sanctions over the last 2 academic years, a reduction of 36 official football visits during the probational period. Where am I here? Tennessee has already been credited for a reduction of 7. A reduction in football unofficial visits by a total of 40 weeks during the term of probation, 8 of which have already been credited. A 28-week ban on recruiting communications during the probation. A total reduction in evaluation days by 120 during probation, 20 of which have already been credited. And also, and we can talk about this too as another silly thing by the NCAA, the program must vacate all 11 wins from the 2019 and 2020 seasons.
All 11. Phew.
Yeah. That'll really show them, right?
Vacating wins is the dumbest thing. One of the dumbest things we do in sports today, because I still remember Ole Miss vacated a lot of wins when their sanctions came down. Like, they vacated beating Georgia in Oxford. They vacated beating Alabama. Let me tell you, those games still happen. I remember them. Just because you vacate wins doesn't change history. Tennessee still won those 11 games. Yes, the record books might indicate they did not, but you can go on YouTube right now and find those games and find the final scores and find the box scores and see that Tennessee did win. It's like Reggie Bush won the Heisman. It doesn't matter that they stripped him of the Heisman. I remember Reggie Bush winning the Heisman Trophy. Vacating wins is so pointless and stupid. I guess the NCAA just thinks this looks bad. If somebody just sees an article title, they'll be like, oh, they vacated wins. But in reality, it doesn't do anything. So, yeah, that's dumb. But, all the bad things that Jeremy Pruitt did, paying these kids, not, even if he didn't directly hand them money, he had people on his staff handing them money. That's not the biggest violation that Jeremy Pruitt did. No, the biggest violation besides the Georgia State loss at home. Brandon, show them. What was the biggest violation of the Jeremy Pruitt era?
Let me pull this up here.
Goodness.
Hold on. Let's see for the viewers here.
Go ahead and pull that up. If you're listening on audio, I'll try to explain what's going on here. So this is just a violation of just decency and a violation of self-worth even. Jeremy Pruitt here is wearing what I call, I don't know what everybody else calls them. I call them a neck gaiter. They're like, you would see people, you would see a guy who was like a baseball coach wear them during COVID especially. It's the little sleeve-like thing that goes around your neck and you pull up over your mouth and nose. Maybe if you're weed eating or something like that. I've seen people do it then. Well, Jeremy Pruitt thinks, I guess it's a fashion statement if he wears that over his nose and his mouth, leaving his hat exposed and his eyes. I'm trying to explain this to my audio people the best, but if you're here on the live show, this is why you come to the live show, people, to see this kind of gold. Brandon's showing you several examples of the fashion statement made by Jeremy Pruitt, and yeah, this has got to be the biggest, worst thing he did while at the University of Tennessee. I mean, what is this? I mean, Kirby Smart there.
Take a look at that one. I mean, his whole literally. I think there may be like half of his eyes exposed. Maybe just enough to see.
No hate out there, because I doubt they're listening to this, but it looks like something the Amish would do while they're out tilling up their field or something with their hand tiller. I mean, this just isn't. This isn't a good look. And
the thing about it, okay, see, look at that. All right, E.T. All right, E.T.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
E.T.
For my audio listeners out there, if you've seen the original E.T. movie, I don't even know if there's a remake, but if you've seen the original E.T. movie with E.T. in the basket and he's got the towel wrapped around his head, yeah, that's the vibe here from Jeremy Pruitt, and that's just a violation. I think maybe that.
I wore it better.
Also, I will say this about jokes aside. I'll say this about Jeremy Pruitt. He also got a 6-year show cause. I believe that means he can't be hired by a team for 6 years unless that they show adequate evidence, hence the word show, or show cause for them to hire him. And even if he does get hired, say Alabama hired Jeremy Pruitt, and they got the okay through the NCAA on their show calls, he still has a 1-year ban. So even if he was on Alabama's payroll, he couldn't technically coach for a year. So yeah, he can sit at home and sip on some water, whatever he sips on, wearing his neck gaiter, and he's gonna be there a while. But hey, it's not all bad for Tennessee. It's not all lost, especially when I bring you this news. Tennessee right now is trending on On3. I mentioned last week we're not affiliated with On3. They're just a great website to keep up with all your recruiting information. Tennessee right now is trending for 5-star receiver Mike Matthews. Mike Matthews is a receiver out of LaVerne, Georgia. You can see he's got offers, and he has got interest from some of the biggest name programs in the country. He's got Tennessee obviously leading on the RPM. He's got Clemson up there fighting for him. He's got Georgia. He's got USC. This is a 5-star receiver who is a 5-star consensus on every website except for On3. On3 actually sees Mike Matthews as a 4-star receiver. But even a 4-star receiver of his caliber is a very, very good wide receiver, or projected to be, shall I say. He's a top 10 receiver across every site. This is a big get for Tennessee if they do get him. I will say Mike Matthews is committing tomorrow, July 19th, 2023. And he will be committing in On3 and 24/7 Sports. He's trending to go to the Tennessee Volunteers and be there on Rocky Top. And this would be a huge get for Josh Heupel, not only to get a talented receiver like Mac Matthews on campus, but to steal him away from a team like the University of Georgia, a team that you compete against every single season in the SEC East, a team that really wants Mike Matthews on campus, an in-state kid. for Josh Heupel to come in and grab him and say, hey, come be a part of the vision or what we're building here on Rocky Top would be absolutely massive. He's a playmaker. He's not your big physical receiver necessarily, only 6'1.5", 180 pounds. You can see it there on the screen. But he's a playmaker. He's sure-handed. He's a great route runner. He's just a good, really good receiver that any team would be more than happy to add. And Tennessee looks like they're going to get his services tomorrow when he makes his commitment. The hats that'll be on the table he'll be choosing between are right there on the screen. Tennessee, Clemson, Georgia, and USC. Really, I think USC's just on the table for no reason. I haven't heard any Mike Matthews to USC talk. There was talk of Mike Matthews to Clemson early on, and Georgia's been in the running the entire time right there. But Tennessee really has stood apart in this recruitment for a while now. He's been trending to Tennessee a couple of months, and it looks like he's going to make that official and going to make Josh Heupel and the rest of Rocky Top real, real happy. And they hope he can come onto campus and be a playmaker in that offense. I'm sure he will be. And this is a big get for Josh Heupel and company there on Rocky Top if he does indeed. I don't want to say it's over because there's always a chance we get a surprise commitment. But if everything holds to shape, Mike Matthews will be a volunteer, and that's big. Like I said, pulling him out of Georgia, out of the state of Georgia, and bringing him up there to Knoxville. So, hey, Josh Heupel, Tennessee, if you're feeling a little down as a Tennessee fan because of the things that come out, put a big smile on your face because you're about to land the services of a 5-star wide receiver. All right, so that, we kind of segue there into recruiting, just talking about Tennessee. We're going to segue again. We're still going to be in recruiting, but we're going to talk about some more teams other than Tennessee. A lot of Tennessee talk to start this show, and if you're out there and you're a Tennessee fan, I hope you're happy with that. So let's transition to Selman Bridges. Selman Bridges is a 4-star corner who committed the other day, a couple of days ago, to the University of Arkansas. And, man, this is another big get. This is a big get for Arkansas for a couple of different reasons. For Sam Pittman, year one was a real good high for Sam Pittman. He really surprised a lot of people, and they won a good amount of football games. And they were like, man, the Sam Pittman era is going to be great. Then last year they really fell back down to earth. They were still a bowl team, but they were not what they were the year before. They were not nearly as good of a team, and people started wondering, man, did we oversell ourselves on Sam Pittman? Were we really high on him, and he's, just kind of caught lightning in a bottle that first year? And their defense last year was awful. It was like 130th in pass defense in the country and in explosive plays given up. But, hey, they're trying to change that right here with Selman Bridges. This guy's a top 10 corner across every site except Rivals, I believe, and on 3. He's a top 10 corner on 2 of the 4 sites that we look at. He's a top 10 corner on ESPN and 247 Sports. This is a guy a lot of people are high on, guys. This guy is 6'3" at the corner position. That's something that we're seeing more and more of in college football and the NFL. Think of guys like Sauce Gardner, Tariq Woolen, these big, physical, strong, long, fast athletes. And that's what Sam Pittman lands here in Selman Bridges. He is a 3-sport athlete playing track or running track, football, and basketball in high school. And you're seeing more and more of this. Take the big 6'3" fast athlete, throw him out at corner because he's having to guard the most athletic player on the field when he's out there, which is a wide receiver. And you're seeing this more and more. And this is a big athletic kid. Really, the sky's the limit for Selman Bridges. I'm not saying he is a Sauce Gardner or Tariq Woolen or one of these big corners, but he fits the mold and he's speedy. I mentioned he runs track in high school. This is a real big get. Taking him out of Texas, too, that's the thing. Going into Texas for Arkansas is huge. This was at one point seen to be a Texas Longhorn guy. This guy seemed like he was trending that way. All of a sudden, it seemed like Arkansas just kind of ran away with his recruitment and got him on the board. I can't explain how big this is for Sam Pittman as a guy who's trying to rebuild his defense, a guy who saw his secondary get ripped to shreds last year to go out and grab a guy who's highly considered by these scouts and experts, a guy they think could translate into a possible first-round pick. it's a big get for Sam Pittman, and he wasn't done this week, was he, Brandon?
No, not at all.
He landed the next guy we're going to talk about too, and Braylon Russell. Braylon Russell's a running back out of the state of Arkansas, a big, heavy back, the kind of back you think would go to Arkansas. He stands 6'1", 225 pounds. That's a load right there, folks. He's a 4-star running back. He's highly regarded. He's consistently about a top 20 or fringe top 20 running back across all the sites. This was a guy who chose between South Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas, and ultimately decided to stay in-state and go to his hometown school with the Arkansas Razorbacks. Like I said, this guy's a load to bring down. He's a big physical running back. This isn't a guy who is necessarily going to pull away from you, a guy who's just going to have breakaway speed. This is your every down, ground and pound back, and man, it just fits what Sam Pittman wants to do at Arkansas. If you watch an Arkansas game last year, or an Arkansas game ever, it feels like they have big hog mollies up front and big running backs who are going to run it between the tackles, and they're going to try to be physical. And this is exactly what Braylon Russell is. I think he's a great fit in that Sam Pittman system. I think this is another good get from Arkansas. Again, you're stealing him away from 2 SEC teams, and I know the teams that he stole them away from, South Carolina and Tennessee, are in the East, but there is no East and West come next year. These are teams you could have to play every year, and keeping a guy like Braylon Russell in state, Arkansas, believe it or not, it's not a very talent-rich state. A lot of great football players come from the South, but Arkansas isn't just this talent-rich state that has 5 stars and 4 stars every year pouring out of it. Arkansas doesn't produce just a ton of college football talent. So this was good for Sam Pittman to keep him in state, lock down the borders, and say, come say woo pig with us, Braylon Russell. And he gets the commitment from Braylon, and I know Sam Pittman's happy, and I'm sure all you Arkansas Razorback fans out there are happy. All right, Brandon, let's transition to our next guy. And our next guy we're going to talk about is Caleb Odom. Now, this is kind of in the same line with Selman Bridges. This is a big, athletic, twitchy freak. This guy is 6'5", or 6'4" on On3's website. He's 6'5" on 247's website. And he's 215, 220 pounds. This isn't an archetype you see. And you see what position it says he plays. Tight end at 220 pounds. That's light tight end. And this is another thing in modern football. Think about, go back to the early 2000s. A tight end had to be 240, 250 pounds, set the edge, block, get nasty in the trenches, and he was good around the goal line, Not anymore. Caleb Odom fits the prototypical tight end these days. What I mean by that is a guy who can line up out wide. He can line up close to the line. You can throw him all over the field. He's just a great receiver. Now, Caleb Odom might not ever develop into a great blocker at only 215, 220 pounds, but I tell you what he is. He's a mismatch. You tell your linebacker to go cover a 6'4", 6'5", 215-pound guy who's running 4.5, 4.4. It's going to be hard for your linebacker to contest that. You tell your safety to. Your safety might be a little quicker, but he's not 6'4", 6'5". This guy's a matchup nightmare out of Carrollton, Georgia. And I think Alabama got a really good play. I think you're going to know this guy's name. This isn't just some recruit you're going to be like, oh, I'll never hear of him again. No, this is a guy I think you're going to hear from at Alabama. I think they're going to know how to use him. They're going to know how to get him those mismatch situations. And this is your new tight end in college football and the NFL. The NFL's starting to trend that way too. Just take your big athlete who's too tall to be a receiver and call him a tight end and tell him to go catch footballs. And Caleb Odom's a good one. As you can see, he's ranked pretty much as a top 10, even top 5 on some websites, tight end in the country. And he's committed to the Crimson Tide there in Alabama, and he's going to be a good one. If I had to give a comparison of, he reminds me a little bit of Dalton Kincaid. If you remember, Kincaid played at Utah last year and was the same thing. He's not a blocker. He's a receiver, but he can line up at wide receiver or line up next to the line of scrimmage and just be a nightmare. And that guy was a first-round NFL draft pick. So Caleb Odom, not saying he will be, but he's got the body type and the skills to be that kind of guy. All right, Brando, let's transition over to our next to last guy, and we're going to talk about Jalen Crawford. And Jalen Crawford's a guy that was kind of hard to find a lot of info on. Jalen Crawford, funny enough, plays at LeBurn, or Parkview in LeBurn, same as Mike Matthews. So this is a teammate right here, Mike Matthews. I'm sorry if you're on audio. I know I say if you look right here and such. If you're on audio, we have a way where we can pull up the recruiting profiles for all our live viewers to see and people who watch the YouTube. Another reason, guys, you need to be here watching the live show and watching the YouTube videos. Anyway, so Jalen Crawford, he's a 3-star on On3, a 4-star on every other site. This guy's 6 foot, 180 pounds, plays at Parkview High School in Georgia, and he's just a good defensive back. Like I said, guys, there wasn't a lot of info I could find on this guy as far as his measurables goes and the type of guy he could be. I know his dad played in the NFL, so that's a really good pedigree there. And this guy just seems like a solid get for Auburn. I'm not going to hype him up and say he's the next great corner in the SEC. I don't know a lot about him, and I'm willing to be transparent and honest about that. But I know anytime you get a corner who the scouts that have seen him think is a 4-star, it's a pretty good thing. It means he's an athlete. Corner, to me, is the second hardest position to play in football, right behind quarterback, because corners have to guard the most athletic player on the field. They have to run constantly. Even if the ball's not getting thrown to them, they have to run. They have to tackle. So, Jalen Crawford headed to the Plains. Now, we transition to this next guy. I am pumped up. I love talking about this guy. I've talked about this guy with a couple of my friends. This guy has the most insane high school tape and high school stats I've ever seen, and I've seen Derrick Henry's high school tape and stats. Let me introduce you to Terry Bussey. Now, Terry's on your screen right there. You can see he's out of the state of Texas. You might see him and nothing strikes you as just crazy. He's a 5-star. That might jump off the screen. He's the number 2 athlete in the country on On3, number 1 athlete, according to 247, number 3 athlete on ESPN, and so forth. And that might jump off the screen. Man, he's a real athlete, but what position does he play? And I see that he's trending toward Texas A&M. That'd be big for Jimbo Fisher. These might be things running through your mind, but let me read you some stuff actually about Terry Bussey that'll blow your mind. Let me get it pulled up here. Terry Bussey. So if you were asking the question, what position does he play? Because it says athlete. He plays all of them. Let me tell you, Terry Bussey played running back, quarterback, and linebacker, and corner, and safety in high school. And listen to these stats. This isn't career. This is 1 year for Terry Bussey right here. 1 year stats. He threw for 2,177 yards and 26 touchdowns as a passer. He completed 64% of his attempts. He also rushed in the same year for 2,596 yards and 46 touchdowns in 1 year. He had 73 touchdowns on offense in one season. I believe my math's right. Something around there. I know he had right at 70. 70 touchdowns on offense in one season.
Was he also the kicker? I mean, what
Hold
what
on.
more can you do, right?
Oh, we're not done.
Oh, boy.
He also had 115 tackles and 5 interceptions on defense. So he had 5 interceptions, 115 tackles, rushed for over 2,000 yards and 46 touchdowns, and threw for 26 more touchdowns and 2,000 yards. Not in a career, guys. This is one season. Now, I will caveat with this. It was 1A high school football. But look what state he plays in. It was 1A in the state of Texas. That's probably the best 1A there is. And 1A, obviously he was probably the best athlete in 1A football. And, he's playing a lot of guys who might not be the same caliber of athlete. But I love Terry Bussey. I don't care if he's never good in college. I don't care if he never plays a snap. I love Terry Bussey because of his high school stats. I mean, it's just awesome. He's Mr. Everything. A lot of people think he's going to play wide receiver in college or perhaps corner. I don't see a way you can't give this guy the ball on offense, though. I mean, he might be a two-way player in college. He's electric with the football. I mean, you heard the stats. You have to give this kid the ball. He's trending toward, and Everything I've heard, he's going to go to Texas A&M. Huge for Jimbo Fisher. It'd be interesting to see how he would fit into that offense or that defense if they do flip him on the other side of the ball. But Terry Bussey, remember the name? I don't hear enough people talking about this dude and this dude's high school stats. They're insane. They sound like it's from when you create a Road to Glory on NCAA and you bump it down to freshman difficulty and you're like a 99 speed and everybody else is like a 50 speed and you just put up stupid numbers. That's what Terry Bussey did, but in real life. So, yeah, remember the name Terry Bussey. All right, are we ready to transition? I'm going to get a sip of my drink. You want to hit them with the trivia question hint?
All right. Yep. So, as we recap our question for this evening, Vanderbilt has had a losing record against every SEC team but one. And which team is that? Now, your hint for this evening. It is an SEC West team, so no SEC East teams on this list. One team in the SEC West. That should help. That knocks it down to 7. 7, right? Actually, 6. 7? 6? 7?
What do you think?
Well, as we stand, it'll be 7.
I do want to ask you this. Did you know the answer to this before you found it or no?
I did not. Honestly, I was surprised that there was such a question as this. I was surprised I could even ask this question.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised Vanderbilt has a career winning
I could go
record.
further. The way I asked this question, I almost asked it a little bit different way, and not to give too much more away, but I almost asked this a little bit differently, and I think it would have... I don't want to say too much. I
Just
said,
leave it there.
I said briefly before we started, I gave a little bit more of a hint to Zack, and well, we'll just see when we get to the end of the show. It might surprise you. But Zack, I believe we're going to talk about some running backs next, right? We talked about quarterbacks last week. We ranked what we thought the SEC quarterbacks would do. We ranked where they thought they would finish, basically, at the end of this season. So. Yep. What do you think about the running backs in the league?
Man, the running backs. So this is a pretty hot topic position right now, especially in the NFL. A lot of them are, sitting out this season possibly for not getting paid. It's the most undervalued position in football. Did you know that kickers in the NFL make more on average than running backs? I don't think a lot of people would know that. It's because running backs get injured a lot. Their prime only lasts 3 or 4 years. And they have no tread on the tires usually by the time they're 30. So, but that's besides the point because we're talking about college running backs and we're talking about SEC running backs. And let me restate what I said last week because some of y'all didn't hear me. This isn't currently where I would rank the SEC running backs. This is predicting at the end of the 2023 football season, where will these running backs rank after the season's end? And that's what we're doing. It's not where I currently have them. It's where will they finish at the end of the 2023 college football season. Brandon, are you ready? In the words of D-Generation X.
I'm ready as I'll ever be, sir.
Let's get it. So number 14, and this I will preface. I don't know a lot about Cedric Alexander from Vanderbilt because he's a true freshman, but he is the projected starter this year for the Vanderbilt Commodores. Cedric is a 5'9", 200-pound running back freshman from Austin, Texas, right there in the Longhorns' backyard. He was a 3-star according to On 3 Sports, and he is headed to the Vanderbilt Commodores. Now, the reason I have him ranked 14th, even though I don't know a lot about him and he's a true freshman and obviously he's the bottom of our list, is because Vanderbilt doesn't have a great team around him. Their offensive line is not great. Therefore, I don't think Cedric's going to put up great numbers or great stats this year for Vanderbilt, even though they do have a pretty run-heavy scheme. I just don't, we might have a situation where this guy's the next Quinshon Judkins and just breaks out this year. I just don't see it for Cedric Alexander. Don't know a lot about him, 1. 2, he's on a bad team. Thus, he's 14th on my SEC running back rankings. All right, Brandon, who's 13 on our running back rankings? That'd be Juju McDowell. And let me stop right there. I also want to say it is very hard with some of these teams to predict who the starter will be. They have 2 or 3 different running backs that'll rotate in, 2 or 3 different running backs that are going to play significant snaps. So how do you know who the starter is? Simple. I just Googled depth charts, and whoever it said the starter would be, I rolled with it. And some of these might be controversial. You're going to say, he's not going to be the starter. Either way, they're going to play significant roles on their team, and I think that they'll be their leading rusher. That's kind of what I went with. Some of these are very running back by committee, and there's no telling week to week who's going to get the most carries, who's going to get the most catches. So just bear with me, roll with me as we try to educate you on the SEC running backs. We sound like we got a little thunder here in the studio. Hopefully we'll make it through it. All right, Juju McDowell at 13. Now, Juju McDowell, we do have a little bit of sample on. We didn't have any on Cedric Alexander from Vandy, but we have some on Juju McDowell, and it wasn't great last year. Now, granted, the South Carolina offensive line last year just wasn't great in general, but Juju only averaged 3.5 yards a carry, and that's just not good, especially in the SEC, but for any college football running back, 3.5 yards a carry is just not great. Even in the NFL, that's a poor number. Juju McDowell just didn't show me a lot last year to be excited about. As South Carolina this year, we'll get to their receivers. They have some really good receivers this year. And Spencer Rattler, his last year in college, I think they're going to throw the ball a little bit more this year than they did last year. And, last year they were very running back by committee. Jaheim Bell, even their tight end last year, played running back. So I put Juju McDowell as the starter for South Carolina. I don't expect many big things out of him. I think he'll just be a decent running back. A guy you might not even know who he is at the end of the season because they're going to rotate so many in. So Juju McDowell is my 13th ranked SEC running back for the 2023 season. Coming in at number 12. This is going to get controversial on a lot of levels. Okay. I put Woody Marks there at number 12, the Mississippi State running back. And why did I put him at number 12, you might be asking. So he's number 12 on my list for a few different reasons. He's number 12 because Woody Marks, his best quality is catching the football. Look at the stats there on the screen. He's had a lot of catches in the past. Even one season had 83 receptions at the running back position. And that's awesome. He's great receiving the football. But when you go over to his rushing numbers, you're just not blown away. I mean, yes, he's had a couple seasons where he averages a good bit of carry. He just doesn't get the volume that you would like. What does that say, Brandon? 118 carries last year?
Yes.
118 carries is just not a lot of volume. Now, I'm not stupid.
113, excuse me.
113. I'm not stupid. They ran the air raid. Obviously, he's not going to get a lot of carries. I just don't trust Woody Marks as a runner. Now, with Zach Arnett's system, they're going to go away from the air raid, obviously. They're going to go to a system that runs the ball and passes the ball in a lot more balanced form, and Woody Marks is going to probably get over 113 carries, but he's also going to shrink his receiving numbers. So when you're telling me a guy whose best weapon is to receive the football, now he does line up, I think he will line up in the slot and do some of that this year. When I expect his receptions to go down, and that's the biggest part of his game, and then you're going to increase the weaker part of his game, I just don't see a huge season out of Woody Marks. I think he's a great playmaker with the ball in his hand. I just don't know if Mississippi State's going to try to get him the ball in the air like they have in the past. And I think that's his greatest strength. So I have Woody Marks at 12 on my list. Coming in at number 11 on our list, this is real controversial if he'll be the starter or not. I'll go ahead and say there's about 3 or 4 different running backs. John Emery, Josh Williams, Noah Cain. A lot of people think LSU is very much going to be a committee running back, and I agree. But Josh Williams, you know why I really went with Josh Williams being their starter? Because they brought him to SEC Media Days. And I think if you're going to bring a guy to SEC Media Days to be a spokesman for your team, it's a guy that you think is going to have a significant impact on your season. And I think that's Josh Williams. Josh Williams, obviously you can see the stats up there. Not a lot of carries, right? He's been, in a log jam. But look what he did when he had carries last year. 97 carries, but he averaged 5.5 yards a carry, and more importantly, got in the end zone 6 times on only 97 carries. That's a pretty good clip. If he gets 200 next year, that means he would be on pace for 12 touchdowns on the ground, which is super good. He's a between-the-tackles runner. Not very flashy. He's just a solid running back, like every LSU running back on that roster. John Emery's kind of your punisher. Noah Cain's got a little more speed. Josh Williams is a balance of both speed and power. I think he's going to play a big role as LSU. You know, we talked about Jaden Daniels last week and how they like to run the football with him. I think him and Josh Williams are going to have a lot of carries this year. And I think Josh Williams will be the 11th best running back in the SEC. Don't expect anything spectacular. As I said, it's a very much by committee, but I expect him to have a good, solid season for the Tigers. All right, number 10. And people are already going to let me have this. Is Brandon Spoles, number 9.
Oh.
Anthony Spoles, number 8.
Oh.
Reuben Owens comes in at 10 for me, and this guy hasn't played a collegiate snap. But Reuben Owens was the number 1 running back in last year's cycle. He was a 5-star prospect. Weirdly enough, was a Louisville commit for a long time. Now, Reuben Owens played high school football in the state of Texas. He ultimately flipped. I'll never forget, the man flipped on IG Live. Wasn't even like, he just like held the phone selfie mode and put on a Texas A&M hat. Just like the most low-key flip ever. As I hope we don't get blown away here. If you heard that lightning and thunder. We're trying not to get blown away and the power not to go out, because then we will probably lose you on the live feed. But if that happens, you can find us on the audio version.
It may be your list, Zach.
It might be my list. So Reuben Owens comes in at 10. He's never taken a college snap, but Reuben Owens has all the tools, guys. This is a guy who, if he puts it all together this year, even as a freshman, could finish as a top 5 SEC running back. This dude's got the breakaway speed. He's 5'11", 190 pounds. He can run through traffic. Go look up his high school highlights. This is a guy that can truly do it all on the football field. I believe he also was a track star there in Texas. He's a really, really good player. It was a big get at the time for Jimbo Fisher. And I believe he already has a deal with Adidas or something like that. He has a big NIL recruiting deal, does Reuben Owens. And I think he's going to be really good at Texas A&M this year. And I know you're like, oh, he's going to be really good, but you put him at 10th on your list. What do you mean really good? He's low. Guys, this is a freshman running back. And like I said, he's got all the potential to finish top 5, even top 3 with his talent. But I have him slated at 10th before he ever even takes a collegiate snap. So Reuben Owens is my number 10 running back for the SEC season. Sorry, as I take a water break there, I'm laboring over here. I'm over here talking a lot, 1,000 words a minute. My mouth gets dry. Sue me. What's number 9 on our list, Brandon?
Number 9, Kendall Milton from Georgia.
Kendall Milton out of the University of Georgia. Now, Kendall Milton has all the tools in the world. I mean, all the tools in the world. We're talking about a guy who's a 6'2" running back, weighs about 220 pounds. He's big, he's physical, and has surprising speed. Here's the problem with Kendall Milton. Here's why I have him 9th on my list. Kendall Milton gets injured a lot. Kendall Milton has been sidelined every season he's been at the University of Georgia for one reason or another. But why do I have him 9th even though he gets injured? And this is another team. Georgia is not just going to have one bell cow. You know, Georgia has done that in the past with guys like Todd Gurley, stuff like that. That's not going to be Kendall Milton. He's not going to get 200 carries. 1, because of injury concerns. 2, they have a lot of great running backs on that roster. Dejon Edwards, Branson Robinson, Andrew Paul. All these guys are going to split carries with Kendall Milton. So Kendall Milton is 9th on my list because of injuries and workload. He's just not going to get a lot of carries to put up a lot of gaudy numbers. But I have him at number 9 because look at that yards per carry. That average last year, 7 yards a carry. That was up there. I think it might have been highest in the SEC for qualified ball carriers. 7 yards a carry. I know he only had 85 carries, but almost 600 yards on only 85 carries. He also got in the end zone 8 times. Kendall Milton is really efficient and really good. He just can't take a big workload because of injury concerns, and it's sad, but that happens a lot. That's what I was talking about earlier. Running backs stay injured, and their window isn't very long. Kendall Milton puts together a good year, he'll get drafted, but I have him number 9 on my SEC running back list. Number 8 is Brandon already spoiled. Talking about the big orange T again. Tennessee, Jabari Small as number 8. And I'm already going to hear this. How are you going to put a running back from Tennessee on the list? All they do is throw. They basically run the air raid. Wrong. Tennessee actually ran the ball last year more times than they passed it. And Jabari Small gets a pretty good size of that workload. 157 carries last year. Now, not the greatest yards per carry at only 4.7. They do have another running back on the roster in Jalen Wright. And, well, I'm not sure if Jalen Wright's still there. Or Dylan Sampson, I know, will help get carries. They're going to kind of be by committee. But Jabari Small is going to get, I would say, over 50% of the carries. He's a guy they run out of the shotgun 9 times out of 10. And he's just a little ball of energy out of the shotgun. Take it up the middle. He's got burst. He's got speed. 13 touchdowns last year. A lot of those weren't breakaway runs. A lot of those were Tennessee's down inside the 5 and they give it to Jabari Small on the goal line. You know, he had 734 yards and 13 touchdowns. He's a really good, efficient running back. I'd love to see what he could do in a run-heavy scheme where they have, 2 tight ends in, big offensive line, what he could do with the full workload. But he does just fine in that Tennessee offense, and I have him number 8 on my list. Number 7 on my list is a guy you've probably never heard of, and I love doing these lists for this reason, because maybe you're out there and you're a huge SEC football fan, and, maybe you don't get to watch a lot of Missouri games, as many people don't, and you have no idea who Cody Schrader is. Now, you're probably looking at that and you're like, Cody Schrader, Zach, you talked a lot about that yards per carry, and you talked a lot about being effective when you have an opportunity. And Cody Schrader only averaged 4.4 a carry. He did have 170 carries. He got in the end zone 9 times. 9 times on 170 carries. Pretty efficient. Not Jabari Small efficient, but Cody Schrader's going to get a lot bigger workload this year than Jabari Small is. I could easily see Cody Schrader getting over that 200 carry mark. And I just got a feeling Cody Schrader's going to have a really good year for Mizzou. In the games I did watch last year, he was a real effective ball carrier. He was a guy that they could give the ball to between the tackles, and he was effective running the football. You see he had a long run of 63 yards. He's got the breakaway speed. I just kind of want to put you guys on these, tell you about these guys that you may have never heard of, and Cody Schrader certainly fits that. Cody Schrader, I think, is going to have a really good season and surprise some people. And that's why I have him ranked above some guys that you might have heard of, such as Woody Marks or guys like Josh Williams. I expect a lot of good things out of Cody Schrader this year. I liked what I saw in the workload, and I think he's going to get a big workload this year for Missouri. Over 200 carries possibly. That brings us to number 6 on my list. We're starting to get up there with some of the running backs. You probably have recognized their name, and that brings up Jason Jason McClellan, the running back for the University of Alabama. Now, Brandon pulled up his receiving and running stats. That means he's pretty good at both. Now, we didn't see a huge workload in the receiving game last year, but that's because they had Jahmyr Gibbs. Might have heard of him, first-round pick. But look at what McClellan did when he had an opportunity. How many was he averaging a catch there, Brandon, last year?
Last year, 2022.
Average yards per catch.
My microphone was off. 12.4 yards.
He's averaging over a first down per attempt. How many per carry did he have? 5.8?
Yes.
That's what it looks like.
5.8
carry. So he was really efficient and really good when he got the ball. But you have to think, Jahmyr Gibbs was their lead back last year. I think Jason McClellan is going to take that Jahmyr Gibbs role this year in that offense. I think they have some other guys that will be between the tackles runners, but I think Jason McClellan is really going to have a really good year for Alabama. He's going to be that receiving threat, and obviously he can run the football too. I think Jason McClellan's in for a good year as a dual threat running back, and that's why I have him at number 6 on my list. Plus Alabama, they produce running backs like nobody's business. Number 5 on our list, let me get another sip.
Number 5 on our list, Zach, is... Oh, boy, it's a duo. Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne from Florida. This is different.
Yeah, so I have a duo right here because I would rank either of these guys number 5. I love this running back duo. This is, for my money, the best running back duo in the SEC. Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne. Their numbers are so similar. I couldn't pick who the starter will be. Even if it was Etienne, I'd have him at 5. If it was Johnson, I'd have him at 5. I just wanted to give both these guys some love. Etienne averaged over 6 a carry last year. Montrell averaged 5.5. They had 16 rushing touchdowns combined. They had over 1,500 yards combined. This is the best duo in the SEC, and they're going to have a big year. Nobody's talking about these guys. I think Florida is going to run the ball and run the ball real well this year, and these two guys are the reason why. These are going to be – you're going to know Montrell and Trevor Etienne's name by the end of the season. And if Trevor Etienne's name looks familiar, it's because it is. Travis Etienne is his older brother, the ACC all-time leading rusher out of Clemson, now for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Travis Etienne, that is his little brother Trevor. And Montrell Johnson transferred in with Billy Napier from the University of Louisiana Raging Cajuns, and he's been really good since he got to the SEC. These guys right here, I contemplated putting them higher on the list, but since they will be splitting carries, I didn't feel right putting a duo number 1 because I wasn't ranking the best duos. I was ranking the best running backs. But yeah, Florida has 2 at least top 10 running backs on the same team in the SEC. They're really, really good. All right, Brandon, who's number 4 on our list? Number 4 is Jaquez Hunter. Maybe controversial. He's got a lot of legal stuff going on right now. It's not even 100% he's going to play this year. But if he does play this year, I like Jaquez Hunter to be the number 4 running back in the SEC. This guy, if you're a real SEC fan, you're no stranger to this guy. He's been behind Tank Bigsby the last 2 years, and he's been really good when he's been in. Averaged almost 7 a carry his first year behind Bigsby. And then does that say 6.4 last year? I think it does. 6.5 yards a carry last year. 7 touchdowns last year on only 104 carries. Like I said, he has some legal issues he's battling. Don't want to get into the details of those. I don't want to say if he's guilty or not guilty. But if he does get to play, Auburn has a really good running back here. As you can see in that picture, he's a big, strong, physical running back. He's the kind of guy that's going to run you over and not going to say sorry after the game about it. This guy, he's big, he's strong, he's physical. He's not your breakaway speed back. He's more lower your shoulder, meet me in the A-gap type of dude. And Jaquez Hunter is a dude. If you've watched any Auburn games over the past 2 years, when he's come in for Tank Bigsby, you knew this kid was special. Also, shout out, we are in the state of Mississippi filming this, and Jaquez Hunter is from Philadelphia, Mississippi. So shout out to Jaquez Hunter, my number 4 ranked SEC running back for the 2023 season. Number 3 on our list is Ray Davis. And my goodness, we got to number 3, and you might be like, who is Ray Davis? Well, he's been in college football for a while. As you can see, this will be his 5th year, and he'll be at a new school. His 3rd team in 5 years. His 3rd team in 5 years. Welcome to the portal era, right? So Ray Davis started out at Temple. You can see his true freshman year, he got a lot of run. Did pretty well. 2nd year, not sure what happened. Maybe injury. 3rd year, he transfers to Vanderbilt. Was behind some guys, didn't get a lot of playing time. But hey, lo and behold, last year he had his breakout. He got over 230 carries last year for Vanderbilt and had over 1,000 yards. Averaged 4.5 a carry behind a bad Vanderbilt offensive line. I really, really like Ray Davis and what he can do. He is a consistent runner. When he runs, he's going to fall forward and give you 4 or 5 every time he runs. You pair that with a good Kentucky offensive line and Liam Cohen's offense, I think Ray Davis is primed to have a really, really good year for Kentucky. And it might be another one of those surprise picks where you're like, who is this guy? Why is he so high? I think at the end of the year, we know Kentucky loves to run the football. If you've ever watched a Kentucky game, it's physical, it's nasty. You probably cut it off because it's like 16-3, and it's just like, this is boring. But Ray Davis is going to thrive in that role with Chris Rodriguez Jr. going off to the NFL. it leaves a perfect segue for him to transfer in and to be running back 1 and to get a heavy workload out there in the Bluegrass State. So Ray Davis is my number 3 running back. All right, you could have probably guessed when we started this who would be number 2 and who would be number 1. If you're an SEC football fan, these guys are talked about all the time. It's no surprise who's number 2 and number 1. The only question is, what order did I put them in? Drum roll, please. Number 2 on our list, maybe the best name in all of college football, Rocket Sanders out of Arkansas. Goodness gracious, woo pig suey. Look at those numbers last year. 1,400 rushing yards, averaged 6.5 a carry, even on 222 carries. He got a ton of carries, and man, was he efficient and good when he got the ball. 10 touchdowns to go along with it. Rocket Sanders is an elite running back in college football. I couldn't say the same for 3 through 14. None of those guys are elite to me, even though Ray Davis and some of the other ones are really good. Going to number 2 and number 1, we're jumping up to the elite category, the S tier, if you will, the kids say these days. So Rocket Sanders is elite. He is a bell cow. He is a lead back. Think what Derek McFadden. He's not quite as good as Derek McFadden, but think about what he was at Arkansas, that lead bell cow. The guy who takes the rock, puts the team on his shoulders, and grinds out victories 5 yards at a time. That's Rocket Sanders. And his name's not Rocket just because he can get you 5 yards. His name's Rocket because he can take off like a rocket. He's got wheels. This dude is balanced. I almost put Rocket Sanders number 1. I mean, those numbers don't lie. He is a very, very good running back. He can kind of do it all. And I love Rocket Sanders. And behind those big hog mollies up there in Arkansas, the natural state, I think Rocket Sanders is going to have another really good year. My only thing I didn't put Rocket Sanders number 1 is because Arkansas is going to be so run heavy this year. I anticipate a lot of blitzes and a lot of plays that aren't going to work. And the guy who's number 1 plays in a more balanced system where I think there'll be bigger holes and bigger gaps for him. So, Brandon, go ahead and reveal who's our number 1 running back for the 2023 college football season in the SEC.
Oh, you know it's my honor to do that. Number 1 on our list, who else but Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss, the sophomore.
Now, Quinshon Judkins took the nation by storm last year. A freshman no one had ever heard of comes in, has more carries, or just as many carries as Zach Evans and Ulysses Bentley? Yeah, Ulysses Bentley, the 4th from SMU that transferred in. Quinshon Judkins come in and is the best one of the group. 16 touchdowns, 1,500 yards, 274 carries as a freshman. An absolute workhorse. And let me tell you my favorite thing about Quinshon Judkins, his patience. Quinshon Judkins reminds me of Le'Veon Bell. Quinshon Judkins is the guy who waits behind the line of scrimmage for a hole to open, and when he sees a hole, he explodes. And when he explodes through the hole, all you're going to see is the bottom of his cleats, usually. You're not catching him. Quinshon Judkins has got elite speed, elite burst, and like I said, elite patience. He's willing to wait behind the line for a hole to develop. He just doesn't run blindly through a hole or into his own offensive lineman and fall down. He waits. He sees the hole develop, and my goodness, Lane Kiffin's system works perfectly for Judkins. A lot of times out of the shotgun, he's got a running head start, but also when he comes out of the gun, he's got that extra few yards of buffer to pause and wait for a hole to open. And he's not the most effective in the pass game. I mean, he was pretty decent when given the opportunity to catch the ball, but man, this is the kind of guy you just hand the ball off to or give him tosses and watch him make people miss and watch him really burst through and explode. I'm really excited for Quinshon Judkins, a guy, like I said, that burst onto the scene last year. Not a lot of people before the season were saying this guy was next up or this guy was going to be the next great running back, but he was. And I think he's going to build on that borrowing injury. That was a heavy workload last year, 274 carries. I don't know if he can quite take that many again. If he can, by the time he gets to the NFL, he's going to be done. But, yeah, Quinshon Judkins is our number 1 running back for the SEC season. And I think Brandon's got us a little highlight video here. As you can see, Judkins with that elite burst through the hole, and footsteps is all they can see is the bottom of his cleats, and he's gone. And right there, you see that hole open up, and he just absolutely explodes and bursts through. Sick uniforms, by the way. But, yeah, that's what Quinshon right there does, is find the open hole, burst through it, and doesn't take his eyes off pay dirt, and the Ole Miss faithful go crazy. So, yeah, that's our top running backs for the 2023 SEC season, and I'm sure a lot of you out there are going to disagree with this or not like everything, especially with some of the guys lower on the list. But you know what's great about that? They have a comment section on YouTube. They have a comment section on TikTok, if that's where you're seeing this. They have a comment section. Actually, they kind of do on Spotify and Apple. You can leave reviews of the podcast, and you can, as long as you give us 5 stars, you can say whatever comment you want. Leave us 5 stars and comment on where you think the running back should have been rated. Do it on YouTube. Hit that like button if you're watching this live video. I'm not sure if there's anybody in here, but if you are, go ahead and hit that like button. Share it with your friends. Send this to your friends' group messages, because this is the show that's going to keep you up to date with college football all throughout the season. We don't have the fancy studio, but we have a producer who does a pretty dang good job with what we've got. And, we don't have the name. We've never been on ESPN. We've never been on Sports Center. Our name's not going to pop up, but you know how you get us out there is through hitting the share button and telling your friends about us. And, guys, we have some exciting stuff coming up in the future. We're looking at getting SEC and other conference players on for live interviews, more than likely not in person, but rather through Zoom or through the internet. Guys, I won't spoil their names, but some guys that you know who they are, we're looking at getting them on the show. Man, if you have questions, if we could compile enough questions, we've thought about doing mailbag episodes where we answer your questions. We have a lot of good things coming up, man. The season's just around the corner, 46 days away, I think, something near that, from week 1, not week 0, from the college football season. It's getting here quick. Media days are going on, man. We're glad that you rode along with us today. We're glad that if you watched our live video that you were here. We're glad if you were on Apple or Spotify that you decided that we were good enough to ride along with you and fill you in on everything college football in the SEC. I'm going to toss it back to Brandon now before I do the complete outro. He's going to hit you with the trivia, then he's going to toss it back to me. I'm going to close this out, and we're going to get out of here before we fly away in this weather. Brandon?
Okay, Zach. That's a great list there. Another great list. Now, next week, I'm sure what do you say? Talk about wide receivers maybe next week?
Yeah, wide receivers will be next week.
All right. Well,
a little easier than the running backs, I'll say.
Yes. Well, we like to do things different. You see people like you said, Zach, like we've been talking. People are rating these rooms. They're rating these running back rooms. And, I just say why not just go straight for the individual players themselves? And obviously with ETN, for example, in the running back room at Florida, the duo, a little bit different case there. But as we move on, let's take another look at our trivia question here. The trivia question for tonight: Vanderbilt has a losing record against every SEC team, but just one. And which one is that? You got any idea, Zach?
Man, I've been thinking about this, and I've heard this fact, but it's been a year or two since I've heard it. Or I think I heard it sometime last year. I have a decent guess, but I'm not 100% confident in it. But I'll take a stab at it. I'm gonna go with the only team that Vanderbilt has a winning record against in football in the SEC is the Auburn Tigers. That's my guess. I mean, what led me to that decision was they're in the West, number one. Number two, they don't play very often, so maybe I'm thinking they've played like 20 times, and maybe Vandy's won like 11. So that's my guess is Auburn. I thought A&M for a second because they're new to the SEC, And that very well could be it, but I don't remember Vandy ever beating Texas A&M, and I do remember them beating Auburn in my lifetime at least. So I'm going to go with the Auburn Tigers. You know, Mississippi State came to mind. That very well could be the answer, but I'm going to lock in the Auburn Tigers.
You are correct, sir. The
Yes,
Auburn
sir.
Tigers. Now, it's close. Now, I'm sure if it doesn't happen this year, I'm not sure if they're going to be going head to head this year. But of course, when we get rid of divisions, I'm sure within the next few years they'll play each other, in which maybe Auburn will finally get ahead. Now, Vanderbilt is they've been showing some promise, and I think they have the tendency, they have the ability to do some great things. And I know that's weird to say. And again, I'm not picking on Vanderbilt when we pick them for this question. When I pick them for this question, but we'll just have to see. We'll see if Vanderbilt can hold their all. You want to know the record between the two teams?
Let me guess.
It's extremely It's extremely close. What do you think?
I feel like there's a tie in there. I'm going to go 19 wins for Vandy, 18 for Auburn, and 2 ties.
Close. There is one tie.
Ah.
And there's a little trickery in the question also.
Are they tied?
They're tied 21-1.
Oh, okay.
It's technically not a winning record, not a losing record, right?
That's right.
But that may all change here before too long.
I'm rooting for Vandy when they play again, just so Vanderbilt can have the winning record.
See, like I've been saying this for a while. If Vanderbilt, the university, will put more resources into football, of course, we know that they're good in baseball. They won a championship.
They just announced like a $300 million plan for football today, I think.
See, somebody is listening. Somebody's listening. I've been saying this. There's no reason for them to, with all that they have, the pool of players in this region, there's no reason that they can't be.
They're located in they're in Nashville, which is booming right now.
No doubt. A very hot place to live. It's a place that's growing inside the metro area, if you would call it a metro area, but also outside. There's just an influx, I would say millions maybe, at least hundreds of thousands of people moving to that region.
All right, so I think that just about wraps it up. Thank you, Brandon, for the great trivia question, and we hope you enjoyed today's show, as always. And if you are not here on the YouTube live show, I really hope that you will check us out next time. Let me look at our script here. We're like a good football team. We script out the first few plays of the game.
That's right.
And see what goes on from there.
What is a team without well-coordinated plays?
So, like we mentioned earlier, we're not going to have the full breakdown on SEC Media Days. Greg Sankey, Brian Kelly, Jimbo, and Kirby, and Hugh Freeze made some interesting comments. And there's a lot of stuff you can find online. You can even find their transcripts. We just are running out of time to do that today, as we've, been on for over an hour now.
I will mention something real quick.
Go ahead,
have
Brandon.
a moment. I'll start with Greg Sankey. Now, I have no doubt that Greg Sankey wants the best for this conference, wants the best for the SEC, and we both agree on that. We both agree on that 100%. But with this NIL thing, he seems to be pretty optimistic about it, and he pretty much stated that he doesn't want to take NIL away, but he just wants it to be. He wants it to be right. He wants everybody to be on an equal playing field, which is fine, and we've discussed that before. But his insistence on wanting an act from Congress to take care of this, I don't know if that's the right approach. And when I say I don't think that's the right approach, it's the timing. How long is it going to take? Should we focus more on the states, as I think we're doing now? But he did mention, so here, and I have a quote here, that he said, "To our knowledge, no state has taken action to enforce its own state laws around name, image, and likeness." Now, obviously, different states have agreed that their players in their state can, or at least it's legal for them to be paid for the name, image, and likeness. But I guess there's no there's no constitution, there's no whatever, if you will. But I just feel like, if we're going to go down this road, I like what the group of collectives are doing. And I feel like that's the way to go. If you include the government in this, I just
don't include the government.
That
in
makes
anything.
me fear for the future of college football. Okay, did you hear about California and how they're wanting the 50-50 split on the revenue sharing? If you do a 50-50 split revenue share for NIL, for college sports, I feel like you ruin college sports because.
Well, I mean, we're well on our way to doing that now. That's a different topic, though, but go ahead.
Football, right? Football's the main moneymaker. What would be second, in your opinion?
Got to be basketball.
Probably basketball.
March Madness.
Yeah, obviously. And then under that, I mean, maybe baseball, and then it's very, very rapidly trickles down from there.
Volleyball or swimming or...
So obviously the idea is to not take away these opportunities for these young people, but that's just something interesting to see. And again, I think Greg Sankey has the best interest of the conference in mind. And he also said, when it comes to expansion, everybody is talking about these super conferences, right? Super conferences, that's going to be the future, or we anticipate that to be the future. He seems to be content with 16. Oklahoma and Texas is going to come in, and he pretty much said he feels like the SEC is going to be a super conference, which I guess in a way, if you compare them to the Big Ten, the dying Pac-12, the Big 12 that's just hanging on by a thread, you could call the SEC a super conference, and it's just it's a non-stop, continuous cycle. It's going to be really interesting to see where this goes in the future.
Yeah, I'm not too fond of the future of college athletics, especially football. But I don't want to dive down the whole wormhole because I'll be here for another 30, 45 minutes discussing that. But yeah, Brandon had a lot of good insight there. Main thing I took away is don't get the government involved in anything.
No.
But guys.
And on another subject, I think that's his idea. We're going to see what Congress can do, and if Congress can't do anything, well, we're just going to take it in our own hands, and we're going to see what we can do. But I feel like you're just delaying it, delaying the inevitable.
I agree. Well, guys, thank y'all for being here. As I've already said, if you're on the audio version of this, man, share it with everybody. Leave us a 5-star review. If you're on TikTok, if you're on YouTube, like the video, comment, man. We want to see comments. That's one thing we're really after is engagement and comments on what you think. Let us know what we can improve on this show. Let us know what we ranked wrong, what we ranked right. Let us know everything. Thank you for letting us ride along with you. We are the sports show that is here to ride along right beside you and to fill you in on all the SEC football sports news so you don't have to do anything. This is the lazy podcast and video. You come watch this when you want to be lazy, but you want to get your fix of college football. And as always, I'm Zack Ainsworth, your host. That's our producer over there, Brandon. And it is time for us to hit the road. See you guys later.
See you guys.